Hey, good morning and welcome back to Taylor Time Live. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and we have a great show for you today. But before we start, I just want to say this is actually celebrating our 1 year of Taylor Time Live today. So last year in September, we had our very first one. So built the studio and got it up and running, and we just want to thank all of you as our viewers, everyone that's participated and been a remote guest or an in-studio guest with us. Just thank you so much for making this possible. And we're excited to continue this initiative as we push towards 2022. Today we have a great topic, sports and entertainment, as we continue our commercial builder multifamily segment this year through. But before we get into that, we have a very special segment up front on supply chain issues. So I'd like to just take a moment and welcome Mark Erickson, our VP of Supply Chain with our parent company, Meridian Adhesives Group. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Seth. Pleasure to be here, and hopefully can give some insight as to what's happening in the current market and how things might have changed since Polar Storm Uri, and kind of where we are today and where we might be as we go into and get ready for 2022.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, Mark, you were a guest here with us 2 months ago, actually, and gave us a very comprehensive rundown of kind of how we ended up where we are today with supply chain and all of the challenges that have happened from, like you were talking about, storms and COVID and just lack of supply movement anywhere. So I would like to just kind of pick up where we left off last time, since it's been a couple of months, and I think we actually have some slides as well. So let's get that first one up, and if you can just kind of talk us through the landscape today and what you see coming in the near future.
Sure. Yeah. If everyone remembers, Polar Storm Uri hit around February of 2021, and it knocked out about 33% of the total U.S. petrochemical capacity.
Right.
And as everyone knows, a good portion of the petrochemical capacity, Tier 1, Tier 2, is located in the Gulf region in Texas, and that polar freeze, because of the freezing pipes and what have you, caused an enormous amount of force majeures, an enormous loss of petrochemical volume and capacity. And the industry thought, or at least as we as users thought, that was going to be a shorter term recovery, but it ended up being a very long term recovery. The ability for those petrochemical companies to come back online was delayed for many months. There is still some capacity, about 3%, that's still down associated with that. But what happened after that is a good portion of whatever inventory was available in the system was pretty much consumed. And with the delays with the startup, we got into a very short supply position pretty much across the board. And when that happened, prices started to escalate. And on top of prices escalating just because of the supply demand curve, we also saw feedstocks just continue to escalate. So the graph that everyone sees is kind of, what happened on the onset of the pandemic. So you see crude oil, which is the darker line in the middle. And if you remember, back in February or April of 2020, the crude oil market crashed because demand dwindled drastically. When all of the airplanes and travel was curtailed, which makes up a good portion of the fuel demand. Speculators and the speculator market was caught by surprise, and actually crude oil prices dipped one day to the negative. So ever since then, crude oil has steadily increased. It's gotten to about $70 a barrel. It's hiccuped over the last month or so, but the feedstocks that are behind that, namely propylene, butadiene, and benzene, which are all key feedstocks that go into the markets that we serve in the adhesives and in the flooring market, particularly propylene. As you can see from the graph, they've just continued to go up and up. And that really fueled the level of price increases that we've seen really ever since Polar Storm Uri. But the
Right.
other piece on top of that is, you think about these petrochemical companies, and when they lost their inventory, and the demand that we have today is very strong. So pretty much for a good portion of the commodities that we need from an adhesive perspective and the flooring perspective, they're sold out. So if you think about, one is the feedstocks started to increase. So the material cost for these suppliers to produce those products has gone up. But the other is because the demand increased, and pretty much they're on allocation and they're selling almost every pound that they can produce.
Hmm.
The supply demand curve has also decoupled a lot of the feedstocks or the indexes that we've been used to using in the past to kind of understand what our raw material costs are, what they're going to be. So suppliers have raised prices over and above what normally we would have seen because of a feedstock change. So just the high demand has added another level of price increases, surcharges, and that we've had to face pretty much all this year. And it's been relentless. It's multiple commodities, it's multiple key raw materials and critical raw materials, but on top of that, it's packaging supplies. So, polyethylene, high density polyethylene, linear low density polyethylene, all those products that go into the packaging projects that we need to sell our goods. Think of pails, think of cartridges, think of syringes, think of totes. The supply of polyethylene dropped pretty significantly earlier this year after Polar Storm Uri. So a lot of those suppliers were hand to mouth in order to get some of those raw materials to produce the packaging supplies. And ever since then, the demand has pulled pretty much any supply that's available. So many suppliers and folks probably listening have experienced it, where you try to go to an alternate supplier, you're pretty much locked out because they're on sales allocation. They're only serving existing customers, and they're not taking on any new customers. That's a significant challenge that we're all seeing, and we've all been facing, like I say, pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
But it's made this past year, from a supply chain perspective, sourcing perspective, and a logistics perspective, exceedingly challenging. Every day is a challenge, and when you think you've got a problem and you're able to resolve it, something else comes up, or two or three things come up, and just day to day, it's a constant battle just to keep up with what raw materials we've got on our way, what trucks are actually confirmed, what trucks actually show up, and so it's been relentless.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's affecting everywhere now, and not just adhesives, not just flooring. But like you were saying, it's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole, where you think you have one problem solved and another one pops up. So, Mark, we've just got another couple of minutes here, but walk us through just a couple of these other slides. And
sure.
And
Yeah, no, I think I've got a couple slides. One is the Asia to North America shipping cost.
Yep.
And as you can see from the graph, the availability of vessels, the availability of containers to ship goods from Asia and from Europe into North America has become exceedingly tight. As you can see from this graph, they're up almost 10x from Asia to North America.
And then I think
even when you're able to get capacity, and if you go to the next slide, similar graph from Europe. One underlying thing that this doesn't show is even if you're able to book a load, once the vessel gets here and they're offloading the container, then you're at the mercy of the trucking market in the port to load that onto a truck. So there's surcharges even beyond this for demurrage and storage because of the logistics delays in picking up sea containers from the ports. But this is just an example of some of the rising costs that are out there for importing raw materials from Europe and from Asia. And think back to Polar Storm Uri, when we lost all that capacity, many of the supply chains where they could shifted to overseas. So part of the reason some of this has been fueled, but a lot of it is just because of where global demand is today and the supply of raw materials coming in. Actually, right now is a heavy shipping month because of suppliers that are getting ready for the holiday season. The highest number of vessels I think I've heard are backed up and off of the coast of California right now. I think I heard a number of about 60. So, one key insight might be is get your Christmas shopping done early, because delays in the supply chain for goods, electronics, and toys. We'll likely start hearing more and more about that over the next month and a half.
Yeah, I just read an article actually last week in Business Insider. The CEO of UPS was saying that exact thing. He was saying he saw supply chain issues going into 2022, and he said if you want Christmas presents, they actually arrive, get them now, because otherwise you'll be showing a picture and they'll arrive in March or April. So
that's right.
Well, Mark, we do have a couple other slides. I don't know, do we need to touch on those? We've got just about 1 or 2 minutes left here.
Sure. Yeah, maybe if we roll through them real quick, I can speak to them.
Okay.
So just back on logistics. So let's talk about domestic. So dry van, full truckload rates. This is an overlay graph year over year for the past, I think, 5 or 6 years. But the most important thing to note is look at 2021. It's the one on the top. So this is the average cost per mile to ship a full truckload dry van. So, and it is up 55% from 2019. And as you can see, it's leading the pack from a cost perspective. Just another underlying cost that we have to face on top of the key raw materials in order to get goods from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I think the last slide is a graph of actually this one. Just talk about Ida just briefly. So Ida was not as significant as Uri, but we've tracked roughly 13.7% of the U.S. petrochemical capacity went offline because of Hurricane Ida. Things that it affected is the polyurethane market, and folks probably on this call realized that chlorine was affected, so the PVC market was also affected. Some force majeures, but basically it's just going to continue to tighten the market where we're already hand to mouth to try to get some key raw materials. And the last slide, just to talk about demand and kind of how demand has changed over the years. This is a graph of Purchasing Manager Index in 3 key regions: U.S., Europe, and in Asia, China. And as you can see in the far right, the blue graph there is the U.S. Purchasing Managers Index, and it's just an indicator of the rate of expansion of the economy. And we reached a peak of about 65%, which I think, I'm not sure if it's the all-time record, but it's the highest it's ever seen. And it just gives you an indication of how much the economy is growing and how much demand is out there. And if you go all the way back, you can see that big dip all the way on the left is back in 2008, if folks remember, when when things pretty much died down quite a bit.
Yep. Well, Mark, thank you so much. Before we get you offline here, do you have any glimmer of hope for us moving forward, or is this pretty much just where we're at for a while?
Yeah, important question, and I get asked that an awful lot. I was asked that at the beginning of this year, and I thought, well, yeah, it should be just a few months before things start to recover. But we continue to see just lingering issues from a supply perspective for critical raw materials, packaging supplies. Speaking with our suppliers and talking with key industry folks, the key point is that it's going to linger. Folks are talking about well into 2022 now in order for the supply chain to recover. With the demand as high as it is and demand staying strong, the ability for some of these key petrochemicals and key raw material suppliers to catch up where they're in a positive inventory position is key for us to get back to normal, so to speak. So we continue to, the problem is we continue to see cost escalations related to demand, and it's hard to see when things are going to get better. But 2022, second half of 2022 likely, but that assumes that demand might come back to a normal level by then as well.
Okay. Well, Mark, thank you so much for the update. We will keep our hopes high for 2022, and we just have to remember we're all in this together. So, Mark Erickson, thank you so much for joining. Let's go ahead and switch gears and get into our actual topic for today, which is sports and entertainment. So we'll jump into that, but first I want to introduce the guest that we have for this segment. Of course, sitting to my left is Gary Shaggar, our Director of Tech Services. Gary, glad to have you here as always.
Happy to be here.
And then next I want to introduce Rick Myers. We actually have Rick in studio with us today, which is exciting. So Rick Myers with Myers Carpet. Rick, thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here, Seth.
Do you mind telling us just quickly a little bit about Myers Carpet and what you guys do?
Yeah, Myers Carpet was established in 1957 by my father, Gene Myers, as the very first carpet retail wholesale business in Dalton, Georgia, the carpet capital of the world.
Yep.
So we currently have what I think is the premier floor covering store in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Nashville, Tennessee. And then our headquarters is basically here in Dalton with our
Right.
HR and our controller and that sort of thing. So we have about 100 people that work for us, and probably
Okay.
another 25 or 30 carpet installers that show up in Atlanta, mostly in Nashville, that subcontract work
Right.
installation for us. But we made a conscious decision years ago to go high end, and Dalton, especially Calhoun, has become a hub for importing beautiful wool products. So all three of our stores have workrooms where we serge and bind, and we do wide canvas binding on Sisal products, and we do leather binding, and we make stair runners, we make custom rugs. But anyway, we have a brand, and our brand is really high end. We're the largest wool carpet retailer in the Southeast, and
Okay.
I think we're one of the top 10 in the country, but don't have any way of proving it. But,
Right.
but our brand is really high end, and we've been, July started our 64th year in business in Dalton. So
Wow.
my
Okay.
father started it in 1957.
That's awesome. Well, that's one of those great success stories, right? So, and we're going to talk here in just a minute about entertainment and the role that you guys play in the entertainment world today. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce Darren Gill. Darren is joining us remotely, and Darren, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. First off, congratulations on a year anniversary. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
And honestly, it's something that is delivering great value. So great job. And secondarily, thanks for allowing me to follow Mark Erickson, who delivered quite the eulogy on how bad
That's a
things
good way of
are.
putting it. Yeah.
It's hard to follow that type of uplifting message, but I'm going to do my best to try and keep the crowd smiling and maybe tell a couple of jokes. But
There we
really
go.
happy to be here. As you mentioned, I work for Tarkett Sports. We're a division of Tarkett, primarily on the turf side, so Field Turf being our brand, Sports Field being the main brand we work under, but we do artificial turf for commercial applications, residential applications, golf courses, you name it. Definitely the preeminent brand, and the innovators who invented long pile synthetic turf. I feel like we've been around for a long time, but obviously trying to compare that to Rick's story doesn't really work. So we've been around for about 25 years, and our turf is underfoot of the Atlanta Falcons, New England Patriots, Ohio State Buckeyes, University of Notre Dame, and we're a global company that installs turf anywhere where people want it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you got some name dropping in there. I guarantee, Rick, we're going to give you a chance to name drop here in just a minute, too. So, but last but not least is Robert Varden joining us remotely as well. Robert with CFI, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, guys. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And again, I certainly want to thank Rick and Darren. It's great to have you guys, a couple of great, phenomenal guys to be on for this segment. And, CFI, of course, we've been around for 28 years now. We just had our 28th convention, and we teach and certify in every category of flooring, with the exception of the turf. That's its own specialty altogether, and we've never gotten into that field. But pardon the pun. But no, just happy to be here, Seth.
Well, very well. Well, there's an opportunity for you, right? Is the world of turf. So,
Yeah.
Speaking of, Darren, I'd love if you can kind of kick us off on the sports side of things. Tell us a little bit more about the interaction you guys have. You said you're underfoot with New England Patriots and all these. So, talk to us a little bit about that and the landscape of that today.
Sure, absolutely. So obviously we're pretty well known for some of our higher profile installations. And again, that's the names that are easy to rattle off because they're more memorable. But the bulk of the industry and our market certainly is high schools and park and recreation. So it's, your community football field is likely, a turf field these days, and it's hopefully ours. That certainly is what keeps this market growing. We've installed 20,000 turf fields worldwide. Obviously, a very small portion of that are for NFL teams or NCAA teams or any of the other major sports. So it's really, kind of the tipping point for the industry was when, field turf was invented it became a much more affordable solution. Not only was it just more player friendly, but substantially cheaper than the previous AstroTurf or Carpeting type version. So it allowed high schools to actually make these investments and communities to make the similar investment, recognizing the fact that obviously it was very difficult and very expensive to maintain natural grass. And that natural grass inherently has some limitations with respect to amount of usage. So it certainly fueled the business globally. But again, we talk a lot about the high profiles, but the real market for us is in the high schools and the park and recreation, kind of that stratosphere.
Right. Okay. So, in looking at that whole market, and we did just talk about supply chain. So how has COVID, how has supply chain, how have these things impacted and affected over the last, call it year and a half, I guess, and what do you see moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, everything Mark was saying was, I was just nodding my head over here, right? We've been affected in a similar way. So, we use polyethylene as our fiber blades. We use, urethane as a backing material. So the isocyanate issues and kind of all the, whether it was the polar storm or Ida, I mean, that's certainly had a dramatic effect. And not only, and I'm sure, Rick could, can kind of chime in as well, but the labor shortages in the, Calhoun, Dalton market have obviously affected us as well. So not only was it needing to get raw materials, but also was ensuring that you had labor, and then the challenges have obviously hit not just us, but the rest of the industry. And it's been difficult. I guess luckily, the client base or some of our clients are certainly understanding, because today it takes longer to get just about everything.
Right.
And luckily our clients have been relatively forgiving, and it's been a challenging year, and we're doing our best to get through it, but it's certainly affected us. We have not been immune to any of the supply chain challenges, whether it be, the freight costs. Our fiber comes from Germany. So obviously importing that material has been a challenge. We've got, we've had vessels sitting at port for a long period of time. So everything that Mark was saying was really certainly something that rings true for us. And the tough part, obviously, is that, if you're a high school football team, and you have a season to play, and
Right.
it's unfortunately displaced some teams who have had to play home games on the road, and that's not something we like, but it's certainly affected our client base, and it's been a challenge.
Yeah. So I know.
As far as the business itself, Darren, I'm sorry, Seth.
No, go
just
ahead.
kinda
I was
curious,
actually going to
with-
tap you in.
When COVID kind of hit, there was that. Well, does that mean I've got a lot of people that friends that do school work. So a lot of times, well, the kids are gone. Let's get the rooms done and so forth. Or did it slow your business on the business side, not necessarily the supply side? Did it slow the business, or did it actually pick it up? Let's get it done while nobody's here.
Yes, that's a great question, Robert. And that happened definitely in 2020. So when COVID hit and schools went virtual almost immediately, it helped us kind of, pun intended, kind of flatten our own curve. Typically, most of our clients want their fields installed during the summer months, but this allowed us to get access to college campuses or high school campuses significantly earlier than usual, and it allowed us to kind of extend that installation season, which was fantastic. It happened a little less this year because schools have gone back, and we now had kind of a return to more of a normal schedule. But last year, from our installation standpoint, it looked a lot flatter than usual. To us, typically it's July, August, September are very, very intense months when it comes to installations. But last year it was starting in March because, like you said, schools were going, hey, you've got access to our site. Students aren't here, so come on in when you can. And that was certainly a nice benefit for us because it allowed us to kind of stretch out that installation season, which meant specifically for our installation labor, it was less intense. Although there was a lot of work, it was a little less intense than usual.
And I did hear you say that the labor crisis, because we call it the installation crisis, and again, that's such a specialty segment. I was wondering if it was affecting you as well.
Knock on wood, right now on the installation side, we've managed okay. So we were able to keep the labor that we needed around, and unfortunately, the delays right now will mean at some point, we're probably going to be faced with a situation where we'll have, unfortunately, not enough labor supply. But at this point so far on the installation side, again, it's been one of those issues that hasn't necessarily hit us or impacted us as much as some of the others.
So Darren,
the other side of the business, they're backed up. So I've heard retailers coming to me say they're backed up 30, 60, 90 days to get to installation.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna tie on to what Robert was saying and say, so if your labor is good at the moment, but what does that look like? So if CFI doesn't do training in this department, Where does most of your labor come from? You know, how does a flooring installer get into the sports world? You know, do you have any insights you can share there?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. You know, it's the industry kind of grew very, very quickly years ago, and most of the installers that came to the turf industry were ones who had obviously been working on carpet. Since then, they've become specialists where this is what they do year round. They install synthetic turf. But obviously, you know, various unions that we work with in various states supply labor to us. And by all means, you know, either, you know, we have our own installation crews, so we're always looking to add capable bodies, and we also use some third parties just the same, and they're always looking at as well. So it's one of those situations where, you know, we can never have enough skilled labor, and we're always looking to grow our team. So we're happy to hear from anybody who's interested in making that jump. And obviously, we have our own training programs, but anybody who's been in the carpet side of the world is a very, very quick learner on this side.
Okay, awesome.
Darren, obviously field turf is probably the lion's share of your business, but I'm certain you probably do a lot of other segments for the, you know, well, either professional teams or high school or college teams also, you know, as far as their weight rooms, their locker rooms, things like that.
You're right. We do, you know, we do running tracks. So, you know, typically you're going to see, you know, a track, and inside of the track you'll have a turf field. So that's a very, very nice marriage for us. But aside from that, our indoor team does a host of the indoor surfaces, from any of the gymnasium products that you might want to play on, from wood to PVCs. And then we're obviously in weight rooms. You know, our objective is to be underfoot of every athlete that you have. And obviously with, you know, leveraging the Tarkett aspect of our business as well, they've obviously got a large education segment. We want to be the only product in the school. But you know, that's the dream. We have 80,000 installations globally when it comes to all of those brands under one roof, and we do believe that we're the best option for any of those clients that are looking to do any of those surfaces. And we also actually do natural grass. We actually have a natural grass division called Grassmaster. They do most of the premium stitched grass systems in Europe, and certainly at some point, hopefully in North America. So we really do believe that regardless of whatever surface you want, we are the one company to work with.
That's fantastic. And that way the districts get to know you, the school districts get to know you, and they know that they can depend on you and your guys.
That's the big driver for us, which is, you know, making life as easy as possible and ensuring that our clients have to do the little heavy lifting that they need in order to find a trusted partner. And that's been, you know, we've got great products. Like, don't get me wrong, you know, our products I think stand the test of time. It's really why we're underfoot of most of the high profiles. But what really sets us apart from everyone else is the trust we build over time with our client base, and it's enduring. And we're finding that obviously now that we're looking at the replacement, whether of running tracks or synthetic turf surfaces, our clients keep coming back to us. You know, our rate of you know, retaining our own clients is industry leading, and that's what we're most proud of, is the fact that we have, you know, some long-term relationships from day one. You know, our initial clients that keep coming back to us every time they need either a new field or a replacement, and that's really important to us. But building that trust and being the consultants for our clients has become, you know, one of the key selling points for us in terms of, you know, why people are doing business with Tarkett Sports.
That says a lot about you and your team.
Yeah. So Darren, when you're dealing with installers and bringing them in and training them, what are some of the big challenges that you guys run across? Because obviously you're dealing with environments. I mean, most adhesives and most flooring products are made, and they say it right up front, right, for interior use only, right? So how do you deal with that in a world where most of what you do is outside, and not just outside, but being abused? I mean, you've got cleats and you've got, you know, people getting tackled and all that stuff. So how does that work?
That's a great question. And, you know, what's interesting with our business, and we'll take obviously the turf side and then, you know, a little less on kind of some of the other products, but, you know, our turf business, we're a custom business. You know, no two synthetic turf fields or applications are alike. So just headed into that installation, you have to recognize the fact that this is now going to be different. Whether it's the size of the field, the layouts, the lines, the markings, the logos, the location, the access to sites. So dealing with that is probably the biggest challenge, and ensuring that, you know, whether it's internal preparation from supply chain to production, all the way down to installation, that's done. But then, as you mentioned, you've got different environmental conditions where, you know, your installation team operating in New England is going to have much different challenges than your team in California or Texas.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, the majority of our installers are seasoned veterans. You know, we certainly pride ourselves in the fact that we've been able to retain our top talents, and we understand that there is a science to it, and we've seen other companies use, inferior labor, and you get a vastly inferior output. So we do
Right.
believe that obviously investing in our installers and ensuring that they understand a lot of those nuances is of utmost importance, and that really has been one key driver to our success, which is they understand the fact that obviously in certain conditions, whether high moisture, low moisture, high heat, low heat, depending on the time of year and variables, and then we're installing almost 1 million pounds of infill, which is sand and rubber, and making sure that you're doing it at the right spread rates and the right speeds and the right temperatures. All these variables go into what we do, and although there's a manual, there's an SOP, it really relies on a lot of experienced labor in order to do that, which is again, luckily for us, we've been able to retain a lot of them. But it's we view it as giving ingredients to a chef. Certainly, I can't cook, so don't give me any ingredients because it's not going to turn out very well. But we believe that we've got some of the best chefs around, and obviously we think our ingredients are pretty good too.
Right. Yeah,
So
for
you
sure.
mean you can't take a carpet guy and just sending him out to a turf job?
We wouldn't do that. Some of our competitors definitely do, but that's not how we go about our business,
Oh,
Robert.
shade.
But
I do have a
obviously,
question for you,
with
Derek.
proper training, we'll get them trained right.
Right. Right.
It's been probably 10 plus years, but I was working on a project, and I did have the opportunity to go to a couple of projects where they were installing the turf. And I mean, it's amazing just watching the base layer as far as them putting the gravel and the dirt and how it has to be just perfect and set. And of course, if they're going to run drainage trenches, because like you said, depending on where the field is, if it's in Florida somewhere, they better have some drainage trenches in there somewhere. But as they lay that base and then they take that material, and back then, they're of course they're sewing the seams. Of course, they got to shear it and they get it just right. And again, they got to take this machine and they're sewing it all. And then they take a massive team to pull those sheets back. And I mean, it was such a project. It's such a unique, for me to see that, because again, that's nothing like laying any other floor. So my
Right.
question is, with all the innovation and everything else, again, this was 10 years ago when I saw that. Has much of that changed?
Truthfully, I mean, I'm proud to say that it really hasn't, right? Most of the techniques you mentioned are very similar today. We're trying to find ways to ensure that, life gets a little bit easier. So finding better tools. So, the installers are spending less time on their knees, finding ways to integrate as many of the pre-made markings in the manufacturing facility as possible. But overall, it's very, very similar, where it's rolls of carpet that are being sewn on site. And, and then you're basically adding in any of the markings that you can't make in the plant. So you're shearing and you're gluing them, and then you're adding the infill. But it really hasn't changed too much. I would say what's changed is our selection of labor and ensuring that the most qualified people are doing it. But overall, the process you described is very similar to what we're doing today.
Gotcha.
So,
Interesting.
and-
Yeah, I mean,
and
I just look at some of the other manufacturers over the years that have come up with different products. With each manufacturer seems to be trying to find products that are more installer friendly, and sometimes I think they see that as one of their ways of helping the installation crisis. But with what you guys do, I don't see any shortcuts. So, yeah, interesting.
Well, my production crew has been great at running the number, but I forgot to mention, if you have questions, please text those in. Let's get that number up now again, even though you have been. So text those questions into us live. Darren, I have a question that was texted in for you, and then we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about entertainment, and then we'll be able to answer some questions on both at the end. But this one came in. So Darren, what is the life cycle or replacement schedule of an average turf or outdoor field?
So a typical field warranty is going to come with an 8-year warranty. So I would say that's your typical standard promise to the customer is going to be that 8 years, assuming that the customer is doing the right things in terms of maintenance and just general usage. But overall, we're seeing that our fields are kind of lasting in that 10 to 12 year range. We have some outliers. I've got a field that's 17 years old and they want to get 3 more out of it. But I would say just 8 to 10, 10 to 12, depending on the areas of the country. Obviously, our blades are plastic, so UV is going to certainly be a challenge for us. So in high UV areas, that plastic's going to last little, not as long as some low V areas. I am in Montreal, Canada, so our fields are covered, for several months of the year when it's snowing. So that's a natural tarp where obviously the sun's not affecting its rays. So I would say between 8 and 12 years is a good number, and we're seeing some fields that are lasting a little bit longer depending on some of those conditions.
Awesome. Well, Darren, don't go anywhere. We're definitely going to keep you part of the conversation. And Darren and Rick, if you guys have questions for each other too, but we did title this Sports and Entertainment. So let's switch over to the entertainment section a little bit. So Rick, I would love to hear and have you share just a little bit of how you guys got into the entertainment world, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it started in 2012. A lady just strolled into our showroom in Atlanta, and she was looking at samples, and she turned out to be the set director for Anchorman 2, the Will Ferrell comedy. So she took a bunch of samples with her, and she came back, and it turned out to be a $63,000 order.
Wow.
So we got to do all the sets and all the hardwood and all the rugs and all the wall-to-wall carpeting. And then she came back and she was working on the internship with Vince Vaughn, and then Dumb and Dumber 2, and then Fast and Furious 7, and Fast and Furious 8, and 4 Marvel superhero movies later, and 3 Clint Eastwood movies later. But we've done somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 motion pictures that we've done all the floor covering for, and almost that many TV shows. We've done 4 seasons of Stranger Things. We've done 3 seasons of The Ozarks.
You're saying some good names. These are things I watch.
Yeah. But a year ago, not this past March, but a year ago, March, when the COVID hit,
right,
we were working on 6 separate film projects when they had to close them all down. But so I've honestly lost count, but it's somewhere around 80 motion pictures that we've been able to work on.
Wow, that's awesome. And I told you, I warned you guys that name dropping was going to come, right? So those are definitely some big name movies and TV shows. And so when you're dealing with that, walk us through that process. So you sell the flooring. What happens with installation?
It's obviously not the same person we're working with every time, but the film industry must be a small community, because these other set directors have found us too.
Sure.
But it's a situation where they basically just come in and pick out the products, and we get them for them and put them on their truck, and we wave goodbye to them, because these film sets are all union, so we don't have to deal with the installation and that sort of thing. And then, of course, if you've got a flaw in it, if it's a second, they're not going to call production off that day. They're going to put a table on top of it and move on. So it's got these great benefits, but no drawbacks.
Right.
And it's just bonus business for us. It's just over and above the normal thing. And a few years before 2012, Tyler Perry was one of our better clients. We got to work on Office Studios, and we did some personal stuff for his home. And so the entertainment business, since 2016, there's more movies filmed in the state of Georgia than anywhere else in the country, more than Hollywood, more than New York. And I've heard different numbers. It's a $6 billion industry. It's a $10 billion industry, but I'm not sure exactly. But it's a huge factor in the economy of Georgia.
Huh.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. So have you seen that through COVID and all that? Did it drop quite a bit? Because I know a lot of movies and TV shows canceled.
Yeah, it basically stopped. But it's come back. It's come back in force. Right now, we're working on a Showtime series called The First Ladies, and it's about different first ladies in the White House.
Right.
We've made 3 38-foot oval rugs for the Oval Office of the White House, but it's a set, in Atlanta somewhere.
Yeah.
And each one of these rugs was somewhere between $13,000 and $14,000 each. But every time a new president comes into power, they change the Oval Office, the rug. But anyway, it's exciting. About one day last year, the state of Georgia had a proclamation, honoring the film industry in Georgia, and I was one of a few people that got invited to that. It was really exciting.
Really cool.
They read this resolution in the House of Representatives and in the Georgia Senate, and I got interviewed on Channel 11 TV in Atlanta. But 90% of the time, I'm sitting at my desk in Dalton, Georgia, and have nothing to do with nothing in Atlanta in the film industry. But and sometimes, they put these production company names on the invoices, so you don't really know what film it might be for. But it's been, just really exciting for us.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. So when it comes to that, I mean, I know you said you guys don't deal with the labor at all, but that's all union. So I'm assuming there's got to be a way for installers to get tapped in with that.
Yeah, I
that
mean,
kind
these
of area.
film crews are just a city unto themselves. They've got their electricians, they've got their, carpenters, they've got their floor covering installers.
Right.
I really don't know how to tell you a path to that, but I know that a lot of it's, it has to be installed. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if you contact some of these film production companies, you could
Yeah.
get an answer to that.
And I know, I know, we'll bring Robert in here too, but when we were talking earlier, probably will make his heart drop, and probably some people watching. But you were telling me about Black Panther,
Right.
and something
Yeah.
that happened on that. I want you to share.
In a scene with one of the Marvel superhero movies, the Black Panther, they bought $45,000 worth of hardwood floors, and then they immediately blew them all up in an explosion scene. So
Oh,
my only regret is they didn't have to do a double. They didn't have to do
Yeah.
another take
Yeah.
of it. That's my big regret.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't need to shoot that scene
Yeah,
again?
yeah. But this. The film
well, that's
industry is
nothing.
just
I've
a
had some
factor.
people call with the project that want to do that.
Blow it up.
I've
Just
had
blow it up?
customers call and they're so unhappy with their floor they just want to blow it up. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I've got some customers like that. Believe me.
Yeah, they want to go to a shrink or something like that because they're so upset about their floor.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, sometimes moisture
hey,
does
as
that
an
for you.
installer, by the way, that's not under warranty.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We need to start putting that in the subtext.
Yeah.
Explosives, explosive devices not covered. No, that's a really cool segment that you've gotten into, though.
Yeah,
Um,
it's it's come back and forth, like I've said.
Yeah.
This Showtime thing has Viola Davis that was in The Help. She's playing Michelle Obama, and they're having a segment about Betty Ford and a segment about Eleanor Roosevelt.
Right.
But it's a busy set.
So then,
Very cool.
and that's mostly a lot of that is the Atlanta office that you have, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
99% of it is.
And then you said in your Nashville office, you work a little bit with other different types of entertainment, like the music industry and things like that.
Yeah. We bought an old building that was built in the 50s and just completely remodeled it. And it's 60,000 square feet, so it's twice as big as our Atlanta and Dalton stores. But anyway, we've done Amy Grant's house twice.
Wow.
Some people, Dolly Parton didn't come in, but somebody came in and got a rug for her offices. And Nashville's an exciting place. It's a lot of fun to. My wife and I have a townhouse there, so we just got back Sunday from there. But
Okay.
Nashville's an exciting city to be around.
Yeah, it is. A lot of energy up there,
It
and a
is.
lot of building. So
It is. It's building all around us.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So, do you see where do you see the entertainment? I know it dropped off almost off the face of the earth there, especially movies and all that, for the better part of a year. But is that trending back up? And do
Yeah,
you
it's
see it
coming
hitting
back. You're not going to film an hour of a movie and then just walk away from it.
Right.
They've come back and they've started finishing the projects that they started. And
Yeah.
but I don't see any reason why it won't continue to grow because
Okay.
it's coming back in force now.
Yeah. So definitely a good market to pay attention to.
Yeah. It's like I keep saying, it's been exciting for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Robert, Gary, Darren, any of you guys have any questions here for Rick?
Now, Rick, I know you do a lot of custom rugs too. So that is really more of an art form than what most floor installers are used to. So
But just outside the entertainment business, we're making rugs, a lot of huge rugs for Shaw Hospitality. We just 2 Saturdays ago delivered what was completed as an 80-foot by 27-foot custom rug that was for the Ford Motor Company's new conference center in Detroit. So Shaw Hospitality made the carpet. We made it into a rug.
Right.
And you can't ship anything that size, so it was in pieces, and one of our installers drove it to Detroit and installed it 2 Saturdays ago. But,
Wow.
fantastic. And it's definitely a niche because it's an art form to make rugs like that.
And also in our rug department, we are making rugs for Mohawk. Mohawk, it was originally for Godfrey Hirst. It was a wool product or wool blend, and Mohawk bought Godfrey Hirst a few years ago. But we are making rugs for all the U.S. embassies in the world. So we'll make 100, 200 rugs at a time, and they'll put them on containers and ship
Wow.
them all over the world
Yeah,
to the embassies.
that's pretty impressive.
Well,
Very
it's-
impressive.
Yeah. Dalton's changed a lot. Dalton used to have 130 carpet stores. I mean, it was just,
Yeah,
it was like going to Hickory or High Point to buy furniture. People would come from Alabama and they'd bring a pickup truck and there would be pad 30 feet up in the air, and I would look at him and say, how are you going to make it back to Alabama? with
yeah,
that? So,
Beverly Hillbilly style.
but that has changed, though. There's probably not 15 or 20 carpet retailers left in Dalton.
Yeah.
But,
It's a lot different.
but anyway, so we've had to adapt, and this making custom rugs has been something that we've used to change our business here. And then, of course, our stores in Atlanta and Nashville are great, having
Yeah.
a huge populations in those cities.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
how big is your showroom up in Nashville?
It's 25,000 square feet, so it's 2.5 times the size of our other two stores
Yeah.
showroom, and then the building's about twice as big as
Yeah.
our other two stores. So we're really excited about it. I have two sons that live there and have homes there, but there's a lot going on there. There's
Yeah,
a lot of retail business there.
yep, for sure. Yeah, a lot of opportunity up there. So,
So Rick, I'm curious. I mean, with the installation shortage going on throughout the industry right now, of course, when you talk about the types of products that you're, selling, installing, working with every day, your guys in house, the Wiltons, the Wovens, the Sisals. If I have 100 installers in front of me, I doubt if one of them probably know how to truly actually work with those products. Are you growing those guys in house? Are you having much of a problem finding that quality of, that caliber of labor right now? Or you pretty much just got guys that have been with you forever? And
Yeah,
I
it's
know
a
I've heard the
combination
Meyer
of that.
names.
We, we're a very mature business, being there for 64 years. So we've built relationships that have continued with us. We are concerned about the future. It seems to be getting more and more difficult to find installers. If you buy a Belgium woven wool piece of carpet, you don't want the cheapest guy you can hire to install that for you. You need someone who's an expert in woven products and wools, and we've built a
Right.
base of those.
That's good.
yeah. So speaking of installation, and Darren, let's bring you back in. I know you said that you guys, offer your own training and stuff like that too, and a lot of your success and a lot of Rick's success is driven off of having those experienced guys that that know exactly what to do when there's a ton of sun or a ton of snow or different. I don't even know all of the terms for the carpet, but all the different parameters that come into that. So what does that look like moving forward with this installation crisis? Where are you guys turning and looking and recruiting? Who can help you find that next generation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, Robert's going to be my best friend going forward because he's going to help find some good people for us. But
I'm here for you, bud.
no, we're, our industry typically has looked to other companies to recruit, dare I say, poach, and basically, it's a small pool of really talented people. We do train, but obviously the easiest thing to do is find people who already have experience. And there are some crews who are third-party crews that you try to recruit and bring in, but otherwise, on our own company-led crews, we've looked to the local unions and so obviously the local carpet installers, and that's usually the best place to find skilled labor. And we're pretty big on empowering our employees, so we let them go and find the skilled labor, and also more importantly, we want to ensure that the people coming in feel like this is a business for them. I think. Rick, your business is obviously quite similar to ours. We're the high end, we're the premium product, and ensuring that the installation labor and the people handling our product from start to finish are the absolute best is of the utmost importance to us. So it's I do find a lot of similarities with what you're doing, and it's quite impressive that you've obviously found a very, very strong niche and maintain your premium. But I think you're doing it because you make really good products, and the people who work with you trust you, and that's what's big for us. That's why finding labor, whether it be in the manufacturing plant or on site, is extremely important to us. So yeah, I mean, luckily most of our laborers stay with us for a long time, but we continue to look obviously to the carpet industry for people who have experience.
Right. So
One thing when you asked about where do you, as far as like the motion picture industry and so forth, one thing I've noticed, and I've only noticed this because we have a few of the CFI guys that have gotten somehow attached to a particular show. Like, we've got one guy that does all the Restaurants Impossibles, and it seems like those, whether it's the producer or whoever it is, once they latch onto a guy, I think kind of like they latched on to you there, Rick, then that's their guy, that's their source, that's their place. Now, I don't know from a union standpoint. I know a lot of it then does get involved in the unions, and I don't know whether it's the Screen Actors Guilds or whatever it has to be, but I have found it seems like just with a few shows that I've noticed, they find somebody that works for them, and suddenly that group is going all over the country doing all of that work for that particular director, producer, I don't know who.
Was that a question?
I'm
No,
not
I was
sure.
just wondering if you had kind of seen some of that as well. Obviously, like you said, it started with somebody walking into your store, and obviously they were very pleased with the customer service and everything and the products and everything you had to offer them, and they just kept coming back, and it continued to grow.
Yeah, as I said before, I think it's a tight-knit community in the film industry, and they word of mouth. I know we haven't advertised to the film industry, but it's got to be word of mouth, and people asking the other set director where they got their products and such. But
yeah, which I think comes back to a principle that we talk about here probably almost every show, but it's just do the right thing, know what you're talking about. If you don't know, be willing to say that. I'm not sure, let me find the answer for you. That's a great question. But building that trust, that rapport, and so that's huge. That's gonna bring far more success. And I know every one of you guys sitting here has followed those principles for sure. And I know, Robert, you train those as well. So hopefully we can figure out a way through this with the FCEF and different associations, and install and IUPAT and CFI and all these different places of training that we can start turning the corner on this and continue that conversation. Robert, Gary, anything else?
No, pretty much it. It's very good.
No, I will throw
Good
in that
segment.
you mentioned IUPAT. It was actually one of my contacts over at IUPAT that got me in contact with another guy at IUPAT that got me in contact with Darren. So,
So
thank
we
you,
owe
Darren.
IUPAT is
There you
is
go.
what you're saying, yeah. No, and they're a fantastic. Them and Install both are a great resource for installers. Of course, we also love supporting CFI. So it's a lot of great training out there, and it sounds like you guys do all your own in-house training and do a great job at that too. So
yeah, but we've CFIs we've known about for decades, and we've had training at our store in Atlanta, and I think we had one training thing here in Dalton. So.
yeah. So Darren, if you were to be talking to an installer or flooring contractor, and they wanted to get into the sports world, what would your words of wisdom be?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. One is there's obviously the sports side of the business that is really exciting and potentially a little harder to enter into just because of the fact that it's a little bit more established and potentially just a little bit more mature. But what I would tell somebody who might have an interest is that we've got a large commercial segment which utilizes a separate set of labor. We also have a large dealer and kind of wholesale network. So there's a lot of other opportunities aside from just sports fields to actually get involved in artificial turf. So we have a whole other world on our field turf landscape, field turf commercial, where I would say if anybody has an interest in that, I'd love to kind of walk them through, in terms of how they can actually, start purchasing and installing their own material, or obviously join our network. So I think the sports field side is one thing, but I see a lot bigger opportunity in a really fast growing segment, which is the commercial business, which would include, any kind of hospitality, playgrounds, and also on the landscape side as well. There's that's by far the fastest growing segment. So that's where I would say there's the most excitement and opportunity.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and we'll be covering actually a couple of those, and we've covered a couple of those other markets as well as we are going through our commercial builder multifamily segments this year. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growth poised to happen. It feels like,
Yeah.
through all of this. I think that's one thing that we're all hanging on to, is that silver lining. That we'll
gotta get better.
We'll get through it, and eventually all this pent up demand has to go somewhere, right? So yeah, I appreciate that. And then Rick, same question to you, I guess. If someone's looking to to make an inroad, whether it be selling flooring, if we've got a flooring distributor watching, or getting involved. I know we talked a little bit about the install side, and you mentioned you're not as familiar with that, but
I don't want anybody selling to the film industry. I don't
so
want
stay
to
out
do
of it.
all,
Stay out of it.
So I don't give you advice on how to get into selling to the film industry.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, but is there any last things that you would say about the entertainment side of the business, whether it be music or?
Well, most
film?
of you are, I assume most people know, the state of Georgia gives like a 33% break in taxes for the film industry. So it's really, that's what's drawn, the film industry to Georgia.
Okay.
You can do it for a lot less money and plus
In
it's
Hollywood,
just,
yeah.
Yeah, plus just the state of Georgia is less expensive to do business in.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
Quite a bit, yeah.
so I'm hoping it keeps going for years and years to come.
Yeah.
It should, the way things are moving.
There was a thing about the heartbeat law that went into effect in Georgia, but I'm only aware of one Will Smith movie that canceled because of that. The other people I don't think are going to shoot themselves in the foot and say, "Hey, I want to pay a third more to do my film in California."
It might be more than that.
Yeah.
Actually.
It could be in the millions, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be significant.
But so I see it staying here for a while, or I hope it does anyway.
Okay. Very good. And so I guess, Robert, any last thoughts from you?
No, I would just say, when you talk about guys wanting to get into the businesses that these guys are in, even if it's not the film and entertainment industry or the turf, but where Rick had talked about all the high end, selling those types of products and having the installers to install those types of products is not for the faint of heart. You definitely make sure you got the guys that know what they're doing with those products if you're going to try to jump into that category of selling, for sure.
Right.
Well, generally, people with high-end materials are not going to settle for substandard workmanship. They're going to want that material done right. If you find a niche like that and you can actually excel in it, that's the way to go. It really is. You're going to make more money, you're going to have happier customers, and you're going to develop a following.
Yep. Well, I think it.
And your liability.
Sorry, Robert. What's that?
And your liability is tenfold.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, you have to do it right, and it really is critical. And I've known installers that specialize. They only worked for high-end designers, and they charged a premium. Their labor was 2.5 times what the normal going rate was in that area, but they worked with high-end wools, mostly woven, and consequently, the designers knew that they could trust them on the job. The homeowner was going to be happy, the property owner was going to be happy, and they weren't going to have any callbacks on it.
Yep. So I think the good news story is, despite the supply chain issues, right, that we've had, the good news story is there's lots of opportunity, lots of demand. If you are an installer or want to be an installer, we need you, and we need more of you. So tons of projects coming up. It sounds like sports and entertainment are both poised to recover and then grow probably beyond what they ever have been. So definitely keep your eye on those two markets. Just want to thank you guys so much. Rick, thank you for being here. Love that you were able to make it in studio. We're looking forward to more in-studio guests, hopefully, as we come out the other side of
I had to
of
come
COVID.
a half a mile.
Yeah, that's right.
It was pretty
That's
far.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Did you need a
Darren,
passport?
No.
Okay.
Darren, thank you so much for joining us as well remotely. Robert Varden, is always a
Thank you.
pleasure. Gary, thanks for being here, even though you
Always
have to
a
be.
pleasure.
Yep.
And
We actually have people from 3 countries here today,
oh, there you go. That's true.
so it's international.
That's right. So we just want to remind you, definitely connect with us on social media. Check out our website. Download our app. Watch our Taylor Time Lives that are every third Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always text your questions in live during those shows. We also encourage you to sign up for our newsletters. If you go to our website and click on the Taylor Time tab, it will bring you to all of these great Taylor Time resources that are education and training It's a platform built by us for you, so don't miss out on it. Again, celebrating our 1 year, and it's because of you guys. So thank you so much. Remember that we are Taylor Adhesives, and we're with you every step.